Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm your host, Roy. Of course, we are the podcast that brings you a wide variety of guests that talk about a lot of diverse topics, and today is no different. We are pleased to have Ezra Chapman. He is a UK-based entrepreneur and executive with a long history of building companies across a lot of different industries. He has been a chief executive officer and an investor, and also became incredibly skilled with people management and all the aspects of building a successful business. His first company was a top 100 fastest growing company in the UK for 5 consecutive years, with 3 different companies he founded were in the top 100 employers within the UK. Chapman is also a partner in the UK's leading fintech business that won His Majesty the Queen's Award for Entrepreneurship. He ran the #1 rated recruitment company on Trustpilot, and many of his companies were the high-profile winners of multiple technology and innovative awards. But today, what we want to talk about, he's created a new company that's basically, it's an education platform, Lifewise, and this is for primary school children in the UK that focuses on the PSHE, and I'll let you explain those, Ezra, as we get on here. But that it's a theme that prepares them for life as well as for business, and just, I guess, a higher plane. If I explain that correctly, I'll let you weigh in. Ezra, thanks so much for being with us, and looking forward to, excited to learn. And I feel we don't prepare kids for life anymore. Barely when I went to school. At least they taught us how to balance a checkbook. But now I don't even think we do that anymore. It's just, how fast can we get them out? So anyway, thanks for being with us, and looking forward to talking to you about this.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the invite, and it's I'm really looking forward to talking to you as well, Roy. And so PSHE with Lifewise. So I don't think that you guys over in the US have a similar subject, but in the UK, back in September 2020, which is the start of our school year, just last year gone, it became part of the British curriculum.
Okay.
And every primary school in the country needs to include a subject called PSHE, and PSHE is personal, social, health, and economy. And basically, it's all the stuff that you and I wish we'd been taught at school, exactly. Which we didn't get. So all the practical advice as to, what's the government, or why do we pay taxes, or things about mental well-being, all those things that were never really covered. Great to say it's become part of the UK curriculum.
That's awesome. And so you were able to take advantages of this, and you have developed and are rolling out a platform to help with this specific portion of that primary school education, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So, we've got a very specific PSHE platform, and our vision at Lifewise is to become the best platform in the world at positively preparing children for life.
Yeah.
And in the UK, that's primarily focused on PSHE. But we see that that's whoever I talk to, even on the international stage, talks about the same need for these types of this same preparation and the same learnings anywhere around the world, because our world is so fast changing that we need to be better preparing our children for it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I doubt that this is a problem that's limited to the UK. I'm sure that because we talk about it here, not even to that depth of the government and things like that, but we also talk about paying rent. That when you get out of school, you live on your own, you pay rent, you might have a car payment, you got insurance, and then lo and behold, there's groceries, and there's all these other things that go along with life that we're just not taught about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because I think the most incredible part of it for me was that I can go into the background and why this was really, really passionate. I'm very, very passionate about it. But even from a practical perspective, on the things you just spoke about there, over here in the UK, we've got a tax called HMRC, which collects all of the tax across the UK, and the government has thousands and thousands of workers chasing people all around the country to pay their taxes. Yet at school, they don't, educate children to let them know that they need to pay them. Right. And it's just incredible. I always thought that growing up. I was like, wow, we have to pay these taxes. No one mentioned this whilst I was at school. Yeah. I'm wondering how many people aren't doing it. Right.
Yeah. Well, and here in the U.S., if you go to work for somebody, of course, they drag those out right out of your paycheck, so you really don't have a choice. But as we encourage people to be entrepreneurs, and as our economy is made up of more and more smaller businesses, that is a key point, that people go out and have a product or service, they make a lot of money, and then at the end of the year, they're like, oh, I was supposed to hold back some money, for taxes and for growth and for all this other stuff that, nobody ever really talks to them about until it's usually too late.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. And so that was an early sign for me that there was probably more that we could do from an educational perspective. But like you were saying earlier, it's much broader than that, and I think it's an international thing. And probably the thing that we see most and having the biggest impact on children's life right now is social media. And and I think that we all recognise that that's has a global impact. And probably over the period of the pandemic, actually having the impact of that on a mental well-being perspective has been huge across children. And I think it's brought to life the need and the importance of these PSHE program in the UK and similar internationally, really.
Yeah, social media, you got to love it, because it can be such an awesome tool, but such a detrimental tool as well. I think this is a great thing to, teach kids that whatever you do today lives forever, number one. But then that the mental health aspect is, I think that, people don't take pictures of themselves when they stub their toe and they're crying and holding their toe, or, when the times are really bad or they don't come on. Some people are very transparent and honest about their failures, but a lot of times it's more of, this is my fancy car, my fancy yacht. And it's a fantasy world that kids growing up just, I don't think that they have a handle on that's not, sometimes it's not even reality, number one, but it's not everybody, it's hard to achieve, and you have to put a lot of work. You don't come right out of college or high school, start a business, and all of a sudden you're just rolling in all this money.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And that's the very much the sort of the impact it has, as you mentioned. But even from a broader perspective, that we're dealing with children. I think in the US, in the elementary school, sort of 5 to 11 years of age, and in the UK, it's the primary school. And at that point, we're really such an early age with children. It's an opportunity for us to really educate them and distinguish between how they feel. So actually being able to separate those feelings and recognizing that anxiety, or the feelings of anxiety, and actually if they're feeling that way, that there's a need to share it. And coming back to the social media piece, it's a powerful tool. Nelson Mandela said that there's no greater weapon in the world to influence the world than education.
Yeah.
And right now, Roy, what would you say is the most influential, tool out there in the world that's influencing and educating people? It's social media, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what we're saying there is we've ended up putting, according to Nelson Mandela, right, and I agree with him, which is we put the most powerful weapon to influence the way that people think into the power of the people. And what that means is that, which is great in many respects. It's incredible for democracy in many ways. But from a child's perspective, that means that they're experiencing different emotions at a much earlier age, and we have a responsibility really to ensure that they're as best prepared as possible for that.
Yeah. So now, was the PSHE, is this an effort that the government came up with, or is this kind of like a was the business community and the community at large, were they kind of forcing this issue to push into this, or how did this come about?
Yeah, it's come from different angles. So PSHE has actually been running in schools as an additional topic, as it were, for a whole series, for a whole period of time, and there have been loads of people lobbying for it to become part of the curriculum. And we're delighted to say that, you know, as of September last year, it's become part of the British curriculum. And I think that I think the pandemic has really only heightened the importance of it.
Yeah. So is this something, just for my clarification, is this something that's taught during the day that the actual school administers, or is this something that they kind of are expected to do on their own and complete it and just, you know, maybe test out of it?
No, absolutely. When it becomes part of the curriculum in the school, there are a series of outcomes that our schools regulator, Ofsted here, expect each school to deliver for each child. So PSHE has, you know, a very specific set of outcomes that Ofsted, our regulator, expects schools to deliver for children. So with Lifewise as our platform, what we've done is created a completely unique platform that has over 200 lessons on it, and each one of those an end-to-end lesson that the teachers are responsible for then delivering to the children.
Okay. So, you know, I can speak from the US experience that dealing with being an entrepreneur and in the business world, it's a totally different game than dealing with government. And obviously y'all have had to get very deep into that to, you know, get this as part of the curriculum, and then having to deal with the different schools and things like that. So talk to me about what were some of the hurdles that you've encountered, you know, going on this path versus as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a great question, Roy. So I've been running businesses since the age of my first business. My first, you know, business that actually earned any money was when I was 16 years old, and it started to pay a few bills at that point and help fund my university. And then I entered the corporate world, you know, building my first corporate business in when I was 22, 23 years old, and since then I've been growing businesses. And what's really interesting about this is that I'm very lucky, you know, to have been blessed with a really high level of self-motivation and a certain level of resourcefulness, I think, that comes from my upbringing, and that served me, you know, pretty well as an entrepreneur. And but what was great was that back in a couple of years ago, we launched Lifewise as it actually launched as a football academy. And we launched a philanthropic football academy to get a particular area in the UK that doesn't have any professional soccer clubs. And what that means is that there's a lack of experienced soccer coaches which are in the county, and it means that those the standards of coaching are really poor, which means that children come into the sport, and obviously soccer is probably the most popular sport in the UK, but children come into it, and then because they're not being coached properly or there's no professionalism, they just fall out of sport, and then they end up doing all the wrong things. And so we launched this football academy to help address that need. And the coaches themselves weren't coaching during the day because the children were in school in the day. So we built a little proposition and got them coaching in some schools, and that's led from 1 or 2 lessons from a sports perspective into a couple of years later into an education platform. And what I found was that what started as this sort of philanthropic side business just lit this completely new level of self-motivation, which went from self-motivation to this much greater purpose. And I think the fact that when you wake up every day and you realize that actually if you can make a 10 or 20% improvement to your proposition as in a business, that it's going to positively impact hundreds of thousands of children's lives, then you really get out of bed making sure you're on your A game and making sure that you squeeze every little bit out of that 10%. Yeah. So interestingly, for me, and what that meant is that I actually have now sort of left that larger corporate world, and I'm now much more focused in this startup Lifewise, where we're super focused on it. This purpose really got me going. And so for me, from a personal perspective, I've left a much larger corporate organization that we've built. My day-to-day has become very much on a startup again. And I think that poses a new set of challenges. And I think coming back to your original point, so that gives a bit of history to getting there. Yeah, the biggest challenge I think with any business is, when you really start out, it's understanding your audience. And teachers are very, very different. My background is recruiting into recruitment and technology, providing services to corporations all around the world, B2B, sort of dealing with Fortune 500 businesses. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I'm having to communicate and think about how we address the teaching community. So that was probably the biggest, early challenge.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing I think is interesting is this is basically what the advice people give to entrepreneurs is really find something that you're passionate about. So, I mean, you have to, if for those that are only listening, you have a big smile on your face. So, I mean, it's obvious that this is a very deep passion, but then you get to combine it with that entrepreneur spirit to, develop and roll something out. So, I mean, congratulations on finding the sweet spot in life.
Yeah, thanks. I've sort of been, from that perspective, I totally agree with you, Roy, and I think Steve Jobs does a really fantastic speech when I think he might have been addressing, not sure, it might have been even the Harvard graduation process, but talking about the number one thing that he recommends is, searching for something that you're really passionate for. And I think that, I have a newborn son who's just turned, he's actually now 16 months. And my advice to him as a father is definitely going to be, at an early age, take your time to find something you're super passionate about, because the moment that you can turn work into what is a normal work into enjoyment, is great. And then, as you say, from my perspective, turning that into something which I enjoy, but also has an incredibly passionate, strong purpose, definitely is super helpful.
So what set you up for this? Let's kind of step back to the soccer coaching modules in that day. Did you just realize that there was just a need, for, I guess, probably more in the outlying areas where there just weren't the available talented, the soccer coaches were, cause same here in the US, it's like, we have soccer, baseball, football, all these sports, but at the youth level, at the very beginning level, they draft dads out of the bleachers to, whoever has the time to coach. And, some of us, even though we've played, we don't have the ability to coach somebody else. And then, like you said, kids get discouraged, so they leave the sport altogether. So is that just something that you recognized? Did somebody come to you and say, hey, this is a problem that we've got, can you help me solve it?
Do you know what? It's an interesting story, actually. So my hometown, a very small village down in Cornwall in the southwest of the UK. And I moved back there for 6 months to spend some time with my father. And the local football team, which probably had about 20 or 30 spectators, had all of my old friends, which I hadn't seen since I'd moved to London. And whilst I was down there, I helped them restructure their committee. And a couple of years later, I sort of watched what they were doing. And from that restructure, they got some success. And the next time I moved back there, I went back down there. They said, well, we've got this committee and we've done these things, we've done really well, but we'd like to kick on and go a bit further. We'd love to get your thoughts on that. So then I said, no problem, come and meet me for a cup of tea tomorrow morning. Anyway, I turned up and walked out, and there was the next morning, there's a committee of about 8 or 10 people all sat there wanting to have a cup of tea. And people I've known since I was the age of 3 or 4 years old, and people as old as 75, whole mix of people there that run the club. And they said they really wanted to drive the club forward. And so the first thing that I wanted to help them do was I wanted to help them to think about what's the greatest, so vision of building a club, what's the greatest purpose that we can put into the club? So I looked at that and said, well, where's the opportunity and where's the greatest purpose? Because we've got to build a club with a vision. And if you want that vision to be emotionally attached to its supporters, its committee members and everyone, it needs to have a vision which has emotional attachment and great purpose. So what I recognised was that there was no other clubs across the county which were really focused on their youth. And actually, is there anything going to be more, people going to be more passionate about a football club or a soccer club or a sports club if it's incredibly passionate about developing its local players and its local community? So when we thought about that, it happened to be we then realized that the fact that no one was focused on that is because there are no professional clubs. And if you think about it, if you went to a county, I'm sure it's the same in the US, but if you went to Yorkshire in the UK, there might be 20, 30, 40 clubs which are from sort of semi-professional through to professional levels, maybe more. Right. And each one of those every year has players, coaches and managers that have all experienced incredibly high standards, but then they retire from the game or they don't quite make it. They might have gone through the whole system. And all those people filter out into grassroots football, grassroots soccer. What that means is that they're naturally replenishing and offering these great experiences and high standards. You go to a county like Cornwall with no professional clubs, and those nutrients which are driving the game up in these other counties just don't exist. So we recognised that, and we decided that every other club in the county invests money in players, and we were the first to invest money in coaches, and we invested all of the available resources into coaches, which attracted all of the younger talent, and we started to build a club with a greater purpose. So it was really looking at the environment and looking at what was that had the greatest purpose, and that's where we got to, really.
Yeah, and that's a perfect blueprint for anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur. You seek out, listen to people, find the problem, and develop the path in which to solve that. So that's awesome. That's a great lesson, not only in life, but in business as well. So one thing I wanted to ask too is, so what is the delivery system? Is it, and we can talk about the coaching side versus the educational component for the schools, but is it electronic? Do you have some in-person combination?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I continue that story to get to that point, so the coaches then went into the schools and we started off with a bag of balls and some cones, and then we realised that there was more we could do in those couple of hours, and it turned into a presentation, and then a few weeks later into a flip chart, and then into 40 lessons, and then into 200, and then into a technology platform, and like you say, we started very much at the grassroots, but just asking questions and understanding what the opportunities were to build a tech platform. And that tech platform is the delivery mechanism for 200 lessons. It's an end-to-end lesson. But the objective is that it's really just the skeleton of the lesson. And the objective is that we take the children offline, so that we're doing exercises, activities, we've got videos of activities, and we deliver the message through sport, through play, through challenges, through activities, and then also there are some videos and other online resources as well. But we try to get almost 2/3 to 3/4 of the lesson offline, away from the screen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's engaging. I wasn't as a youngster, I probably wasn't the best student because I was bored and would rather be out. But if you could take my lesson and put it out on the ball field, I would be much more amenable to learning that for sure. So
absolutely, yeah, we're all different learning types. That's right. You're right, and that's what we realized. So actually, you're right. That we incorporate storytelling for those that really audio based listeners, and then we've got very much sort of gamified learning, and then there's a whole play section as well, so that all of the learnings are incorporated into physical activities. So the objective is that within an hour, we will have touched all of the different learning types to try and deliver the most effective message we can.
You know, here in the U.S., our schools are controlled by local agencies. So, I mean, you cross one area to another, there can be some significant difference. Did you find that there were challenges to roll this out to the different entities that you had to, or are y'all different, maybe a little bit more controlled since it was dictated curriculum? I know that they had to have it, but you know, sometimes there's a kind of a different interpretation of how we want to deliver this.
Yeah, no, we have our competitors like everyone else, right? And we're out there. You know, the curriculum was like you say, it became part of the British curriculum in 2020, which meant that there's been a significant focus on it. But what we've had to do, you know, as any small business needs to do, you know, we've got to continually pivot and evolve and ensure that, you know, we're as many steps ahead of our competition as possible, and that's what's led us to be able to really get ahead of the competition and to build market share quickly.
So, and this applies both to coaches and to the you know, the PSHE part too. But so where did you go to get experts? Did you actually find retired coaches and players that could, I guess, maybe do videos of different things, or at least write some stuff? And then on the other side, professors or real people in real life. How did that look like developing it?
Yeah. So that was great fun, actually. So, and it sort of served its purpose because we evolved from the sports field, you know, from a bag of balls and cones into this tech platform. It's quite a gradual process. But what we've done was, we built it. We say it's built by teachers for teachers, and what that means is that we started to build a community of teachers and coaches, which were specialists in all of their fields, and we started to work with them. And there was a great opportunity there. The first one was that we were talking to our audience, right. So we really understood what made them tick, whilst also building out the resources that we needed on the platform. And I think that it's interesting. I'm a massive believer in principles and values-based leadership. I'm super lucky that I had an entrepreneurial father, and he told me at an early age, he said, you know, a not so clever person is someone who doesn't learn from their mistakes. A smart person is a person who learns from their mistakes. A really smart person is someone who learns from other people's mistakes. Right. And that was stuck with me a long way. And that's where my values and principles-based leadership came from, which was not just based on my own learnings, but building a set of principles and values which really guide my decision making, or our decision making as a business. And it's funny because in the US, I'm not sure if have you seen the TV series Making a Murderer?
Yes, actually I have. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. Now, the second series of that, I don't know if you remember, but there's an amazing lady lawyer that gets involved with the case, and she does a really great job of sort of unwinding the case. And she says that the best way to understand a case is to completely experience the case, right? And what she does, she actually goes through herself every step of the process as if she was actually committing the crime or whatever it might be. And so when you're coming back to my values and principles-based leadership, you know, that was a significant sort of value or principle that I developed bizarrely from that show, which was that whatever I do, I try to get into the footsteps as closely as I can as my audience. We want to live and breathe it and experience it, because there's nothing, you know, that one of the greatest mistakes that I've made, and I'm sure that loads of other people have made, people listening today, I'm not sure you've done this as well, Roy, whereas you're convinced that your idea, right, is the right idea, and you get so passionate about it, and you can lose sight of of your audience. And I think if you can bring any idea you've got, if you can bring it back to that principle of experience it to understand it,
right,
detach yourself from the emotion of the idea or the concept, and get in the shoes of your audience, work with your audience, and really test it. And with Lifewise, that was just a really valuable principle, which meant that the first thing we done was build a community of teachers, and we just dropped ourselves into that, and we started talking about it and understanding what was important and wasn't important. And I think that that's expedite. And again, it comes back to that principle that my father gave me around learning from other people's mistakes, right? So all those teachers could tell us all the things that our competition had done that they don't like.
Yeah.
Right. And it's an incredibly valuable process for us.
Yeah, and I think that also translates into something is we don't always have to have the answer. That, I kind of look at that as a second part of that. What you were saying, what your dad told you, is that the smartest man in the room doesn't always have the answers, but he knows where to go find them, and that's the important part.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And that's also bizarrely that comes back to that's an incredibly powerful principle you talk about there, Roy. And I'll ask you in a second where you've got that from, because I'm sure there's someone or some way you've learned about that. But there's not. Lifewise, we're trying to teach people skills as well as knowledge, because we recognize, and from my experience, I don't know about you, Roy, but skills and tools are far more powerful than knowledge. I want to teach people and help people to find the answers to the questions they need, rather than trying to teach them some of the answers to some of the questions they might get asked one day.
Right. Yeah, and I just, I guess I picked that up from being around sales for so long, is that, you see people that struggle because if you ask me a question about my product or service and I don't know the answer, I may feed you a line of BS just to make you be quiet or make you think that I know what I'm talking about. But if you look at really successful ones, they are not scared to say, you know what, I don't have this answer, but I can definitely get it for you. And I have so much more respect for that. And especially also as I can relate to, the hiring process as well. That's what I'm more interested in, is if somebody is resourceful enough to, if I say, I need you to learn, how to build a nuclear reactor, I don't expect them to say, great, I got the plans in my back pocket. I expect that, hey, I can research it and I can lay you out some best practices. And, that's just really all we can expect. And, that's another great thing about the internet, is it makes it easier. Back in my day, it's like you had to go to the encyclopedia and pull the, hope that yours was up to date. And I think when I was growing up, we had a set from World War II, like the 1940s. So, you had to hope your encyclopedia set was up to date and somebody didn't borrow the S section and it was gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Coming back to your point there, though, Roy, another point which was around hiring, and what you've just said there, I'm also a huge believer in. I don't know about your experiences in this, but from a hiring perspective, when you're asking that question, how do you build a nuclear reactor, right? And what you're looking for is someone who is going to tell. For me, it's about how they deal with that question, as opposed to the answers they give, the knowledge they share. And I think that's a really important part from a hiring perspective, that what you should be looking about is how people go about, is learning from how people demonstrate what skills or tools they have to achieve the objectives that you're giving them, rather than do they have the answers to the questions you're asking.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that same thing you're talking about, which is, having the ability to get the answers rather than just have them.
Yeah. And in this fast changing world, I may have had the answer a week ago or a year ago, but things have changed and there could be something even better. So it never hurts to do a little research to just, find out what is the latest and the greatest. So I don't think you can go wrong. A lot of times people look at resumes and they look at education, and it really stops there. But then if they don't have, I guess what I like to call that grit factor, if you don't have that grit factor, some of that can be lost as well.
Yeah, 100%. And what's interesting there is that over the years, we've built a whole series of different, you referred to them earlier, recruitment and services businesses. And those businesses, they were global businesses across, from all the way from the Philippines right the way through the UK, Europe, into the US. But they're all sales-led businesses. And I don't know about yourself, but one of the most difficult people to hire is salespeople. Yes. Right? It's a real, and you referred to it, it's a real challenge. And what I don't know about you, but on our list of criteria for hiring those salespeople, we're looking for self-motivated people. Was that part of what you'd look for?
Yes, yeah, somebody that's self-motivated, that, and I'm a little different in that sales aspect, because typically I've sold, higher end services. So I want somebody that knows how to educate. I don't want to just say, Ezra, we spoke last week and I know you're thinking about it. Are you ready to sign up today? I want somebody that's going to be pulsing you like, hey, this is something that I just read this article that I think it might help you in your business or your struggle to make these decisions. It's not a quick, if you're selling $5 widgets, then yeah, it's like, hey, you want to buy or not? I got to move on to the next guy. But when you're selling high price services or equipment, you got to take the time. And we in this instant gratification society, I like the agrarian model of we plant, we take care. Anyway, we plant, we take care of the seed, and then we harvest. And, we've kind of gotten to this point of we throw a seed and then harvest it, without the cultivation. That's what I was trying to think of. We leave the cultivation part out. And I think that's an important step in this process. Like I said, the higher you get up the dollar chain, is that it takes time. We have to build a relationship, and I have to know, am I solving your problem? What is your problem? Listen, like you were talking earlier, it's the same thing. I have to listen to what you're saying so I can decide, first off, can I even solve it? And then pitch you on these benefits. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Curiosity's got to be one of the greatest character traits that I think most successful people have, really. So and that curiosity around, continually questioning. But coming back to your point earlier about grit, when you're hiring people, you're looking for that grit. We have the same thing with that sort of high levels of self-motivation. And this actually is what made me realize we've hired literally thousands of salespeople over the last 20 years. And as I got older, I realized that actually the difference between most people that say, and nearly every sales guy in every interview, are you self-motivated? Yes, I'm absolutely self-motivated. We've all been there, right? But how do you scratch beyond the surface, right? Because salespeople, they've learned to communicate, and 9 out of 10 can effectively communicate. So you have to really scratch beyond the surface to really understand it. And what I found, and I don't know if you've been through this, but we ended up as looking at people's childhoods. Right. And I'd absolutely got to a place where we recognized that self-motivation normally came from experience, how that comes from, their learnings and how they were brought up as a child. It might be their environment. It might have been their teaching, their learning, their parents. It could be anything. And 9 times out of 10, there's a reason. There's a reason that people got that grit that you're looking for. Right. And what we realize is that super self-motivated people, we have amazing stories where you come across someone, you go, I just know this person is 100% committed. They are so determined. Tell me about your childhood. And then they'll be, well, my father, he's really successful. Then he lost everything. And then we had to, at the age of 11 years old, I was in my garage and I was rebuilding these. He was going to sell these widgets, and me and my brother and my mum, we had to, when we got back from school, for 4 hours every night, build the widgets. And we done that. And then eventually he got back on his feet, and you go, right, there you go. That's, you really knew what it takes, what it's like to fail, and also what it takes to succeed. And it's that experience which made us realize the huge opportunity that we have with Lifewise to positively prepare children for life. And actually, there's so much more, we can do to positively influence the outcomes and prepare children for life. But it's at that age, the developmental brain, the process is 90% done by the time they're 5 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So.
No, and that's an interesting thought on the recruitment about asking about childhood. I'm going to remember that for future. But yeah, you're right. I think that's the great thing about this plan for Lifewise is, reaching these children at such a young age, because like you said, so many times habits, thoughts, things are already formed, by the time you can reach out in, like in the business world, by the time we can reach them when they're in their 20s, it's usually, sometimes it's too late by then.
Absolutely, yeah. And come back to Nelson Mandela's speech. You'll hear me continually referring back to these principles from other people. But what he says is that there's no greater way to affect the world than through education. And for sure, when my 16-month-old son is
out there for a minute, as I finish your thought for me, you were saying your 16-month-old son, and that's where.
Yes, I was saying that. We were talking about positively influencing children at a young age, and I said when your 16-month-old child, 16-month-old child literally frowns at you for your behavior, then you realize that they're smarter than you think they are.
Exactly. Well, I guess that little bleep means we're probably running late on time. I know. I appreciate you giving me so much extra time. This is so not only interesting about Lifewise and that concept and how it developed, but also just your thoughts on, the entrepreneurial business and recruiting world. So I certainly do appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah. And so if you don't mind, tell everybody if, number one, how can they reach out if they want to talk to you, but if they want to check out Lifewise, how can they do that as well?
Yeah, no problem. So you can find me on LinkedIn as Ezra Chapman. You can also email me and at ezra@lifewise.co.uk.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. That's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. Of course, I am Roy, your host, and you can find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We are on all the major social media networks, as well as all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. I'll be glad to add. Till next time, take care of yourself and take care of your business.